and welcome to More Than Clothes with me, your host, Sarah Ryan. In this podcast, we'll explore the connection between style, identity, confidence, and mindset, and why getting dressed is never just about clothes. Have you ever felt guilty about taking an interest in clothes or what you wear or what you look like? Have you ever thought to yourself, oh, I'm being so vain, I shouldn't be thinking like this? Or maybe you've met somebody who says, oh, I don't care about that stuff. That's just, nonsense. Well, let's get into that today. I love this topic because, my work has been based around this for many years. And it really doesn't matter what side of the fence you sit on, whether you love style unapologetically, or if you feel that sense of guilt about taking interest in it, or whether you say you don't care. I'm going to address all of those things today. The first thing I want to say today is, unless you are a full-time nudist, style is for you. That's a quote by Tan France. What you wear is a form of non-verbal communication. We send messages about who we are, even what we value, how we're feeling, probably even what kind of music we like to listen to. You can communicate all of that without even saying a word, just through what you decide to wear. And whether you like it or not, it is one of the first things we will notice about people. What you wear creates an impression. It doesn't matter whether you agree with that or not. That is what happens. We cannot not communicate through what we wear. There was a study done about how images communicate versus words. And it was fascinating because if you think about it, if you imagine this, if you throw up, let's say 20 brand names onto a screen and it's just the words, just black and white on a screen, just words, and you were asked to find a really well-known brand, it would take you a while to kind of look through all the different words and read them and then finally see the one that you're looking for. Whereas if you were looking for the logo, the image associated with that brand, you would find it so much quicker. So our brains are hardwired to assess images and process images far quicker than words. So yes, humans make assumptions, whether that's right or wrong, it doesn't really matter. It's what we do. We're hardwired to do that. This goes back way into evolution, where we were scanning our environments for dangers. Is that what we're doing now? Hopefully not. But that's where it comes from. We are scanning our environment, we are reading cues, and we are understanding whether something is a threat to us or not, or we're reading people. Now, of course, there are different levels of taking interest in style, in fashion. And I think there is probably a tipping point where it leans into vanity for sure. However, I want to share with you some work that I did with a client. Now, this person actually did my online course, Streamline Your Style. Many of you maybe listening to this have done that course, and you'll know that it's so much more than talking about clothing and what suits your body and all of that. We do go into limiting beliefs in that. We do go into the mindset. We do a lot of the mind work that goes on behind the scenes of style. So this woman did the course, and it's funny because some people will sign up to this course and they'll get really involved and they'll share with the group and they'll be on the live calls. And some people I never see, I never hear from. And this woman was actually one of those people who, she signed up to the course and, obviously did the work in the background, which is absolutely fine. And, I didn't think anything more of it. It was actually a couple of years after she first signed up to the course that I got an email. And she started the email off by saying that she had signed up for the course, and she actually went through the course twice. There's a lot in it, and most people will end up doing the course multiple times because there is so much in it, and everybody gets access for life in that course. So she sends this email to me and tells me a little bit about her story. I always get a little emotional about this one. She disclosed to me that for the last 15 years, she actively avoided mirrors. So she removed every mirror in her house. And when she was out and about, she actively avoided mirrors. She couldn't look in them because she didn't like what she saw. She went on to say then, let's just take a minute to take stock of that, because think about the stakes here. What must have happened to get to a point where you can't look in the mirror? You don't want to see yourself just as you are. One can assume that her confidence was at rock bottom. I can only imagine the effect that that may have had on her relationships. I can imagine that she did not seek out opportunities for herself, personally, professionally. She may have isolated herself because her confidence was so low. That is far beyond a question of vanity. That is well-being. So in her email, she told me about this, that she had avoided the mirrors and hadn't had mirrors in her house for 15 years. And she said, having done your course twice through, I finally went out, bought a few mirrors to put back in the house, and I'm not only able to look at myself in the mirror again, but I like what I see. And that was profound to me. The fact that she's not going out trying to be some fashionista. This was survival. Purely survival. And she did go on to say that, this has not only been allowed her to look in the mirror and like what she sees, but it has transformed her life. She also mentioned that her relationships have improved. She is taking up hobbies and seeking out friendship groups, and it has transformed her life. So how can we say that taking an interest in style, taking an interest in one's appearance is vanity? That is, first of all, survival. And second of all, well-being. I have a friend who is a clinical psychologist, and she was telling me that, a lot of her clients will come in and a lot of them are dressing in black. And she knows it's a reflection of their mood. But she notes that when she starts to see a turning point in her clients, the first clue is in what they wear. There is a little bit more joy in what they choose to wear. And it's a reflection of what's going on the inside. So if you are that person who thinks that, you feel guilty about taking an interest in what you wear, please don't. You only have to take that case of my client, or, as I said, my friend, the clinical psychologist, who can see the improvement in their clients starting in their clothes. This is well-being. This is not vanity. I could tell you many other stories, and I probably will throughout the podcast, about clients I've worked with who have had these kind of breakthroughs within their style. And when I say style, don't forget I am talking about identity here. I'm not just talking about clothes, because that is where The real work begins. It's not just, again, I've said it before, it's not just color analysis is going to change your life. No, it's doing the work behind the scenes in identity, in confidence, in self-esteem, in self-expression. It's so, so important. So I will begin to share more stories with you throughout the podcast if they're relevant. But that woman, that one story, it stands out to me so much because I find it so hard to imagine putting myself in her shoes where you find yourself in a position that you are making yourself invisible, removing mirrors so that you are not seen. That's, that's a hard place to be in. So, thankfully, not all my clients are at that point, but that just stands out to me. And, doing that little bit of work on who you are, who you want to be, building your confidence, and then, yes, figuring out the things that, the icing on the cake, as I call it, the clothes, the color, that kind of thing. It's a bigger picture, but being clear on who you are and being sure of who you are, unapologetically, so, so important. If we think about uniforms for a second, and we say, again, hey, clothes don't matter, clothes don't communicate. If you are arguing that point, take uniforms for as an example. And I'm going to go back to my experience working as cabin crew, where, of course, uniform was so important. Image was so important. Every time we got on an aircraft or even walked through an airport, I'll always remember the impact I think we had as a group of people in uniform walking through airports or walking through the hotel lobby. The impact that it made on people. People would step back and pause and watch as we walked through because of what that uniform was communicating. There was a sense of authority to it, I suppose. Now, I can't read the minds of the people that were, stopped and looked, but it was truly impactful. And even when I'm flying as a passenger and I see a group of crew walking through the airport, taking pride in what they're doing and what they're wearing, it's impressive. And it's, you do stop and stare. And if you're getting on their flight, there's a reassurance there that these people got it under control. They know what they're doing. I'm safe. That's what uniforms are supposed to do. They're to communicate something. And in this case, it was to communicate a sense of safety, reassurance. I mean, if you got on a flight and your flight crew were wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, I don't think that would instill confidence or reassure you that they would know what to do in an emergency. Whereas a uniform can do that. And I think that's quite impressive. And it tells a lot about what clothes can do. What you wear communicates things. I've often had to get up on stage and speak to a group of people. I'm not going to get up there in my pajamas. I wouldn't expect people to listen to me if I did that. Who would I be if I got up there in my pajamas and start speaking about identity and style? And people would be so distracted and kind of thinking to themselves, what is she wearing on that stage? They'll be whispering to each other. They may get up and leave. I wouldn't blame them. When I get up on stage, I am there as a person who is a thought leader in what I'm speaking about. I'm supposed to be confident. So what you choose to wear, if you are a person speaking on stage or have some position of authority, what you wear matters. It can make or break your interactions with your audience or with the person in front of you. Now, you might be saying, well, Sarah, I'm whatever, I'm a consultant surgeon. I've done the hard work. I know I'm really good at my job. Why do I need to dress a certain way? Because if you, again, dress in a way that is not maybe appropriate for the position, you're up against it. You're not instilling trust. You're not instilling confidence. So why not walk into the room and have most of the work done for you just by simply communicating the right thing? So I hope with those examples so far, you've understood that you cannot not communicate. It doesn't matter if you take an interest in your style or fashion or whatever you want to call it, clothes. It doesn't matter. If you're wearing something, you are communicating something. If it's the right thing or not, that's a different thing. So just think to yourself the next time you are getting dressed, ask yourself, if I was meeting somebody today and they didn't know me at all, what would they read from me? Because they are reading something. Is it the right thing? Maybe not. Let's switch gear for a second, and I want to talk about something that you may be familiar with, or you may have heard it back in school times. Do you remember something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs? That might be ringing a bell with some of you. If not, I'll go through a little bit of detail about it. But basically, it's a psychological theory on human motivation. In this, it's designed in a pyramid, and the bottom of the pyramid is the things that you absolutely need before you start thinking about anything else in life. Now, there's been some adaptations to this over time, but we're not going to get into that detail today. But just to let you know that the main levels of this hierarchy of needs is on the very base level, you have your physiological needs. In other words, you need to be able to breathe, okay, to live. Food, water, shelter, sleep, and listed in there is clothing. Now, are we talking about, well, I haven't got my leopard print scarf on, therefore my physiological needs are not being met? No, that is not what we're talking about here. So clothing in this sense is for protection from the elements. Okay, if there's too much sun or if there's too much cold, right? This is clothing for protection, for survival. So we're not getting into, I haven't got the latest trend. Okay, that is not where we're at with this one. But if these basic needs are not being met, the likelihood is that you're not going to be thinking along the lines of, am I expressing myself? Because you simply need to put food on the table. You need to have shelter. This is survival. So if these needs are not being met, of course you're not going to be thinking about much else. So I recognize that, many people are struggling with putting food on the table, with getting a roof over their head. I get that. And so to be able to consider how you're expressing yourself in your clothes, I know that there's a privilege that comes with that. I absolutely get that. But like I said before, it's finding that balance. Once you have those basic needs taken care of, we move up this hierarchy of needs. And I refer back to my client that I talked about earlier with the mirrors. We can't say that didn't matter to her, that she was being vain. That was absolutely survival for her. So let's say your physiological needs are taken care of, hopefully. And then we move up the pyramid to safety and security. And under this is like job security, your health is taken care of. You feel secure in your family situation, your partnership, in your social setting, which is connected to the next level, love and belonging. So that is your friendships, intimacy, your connection and family. And this is exactly where you start to think about your identity and your expression of yourself. I think there's a huge, we could go in depth here on these two levels, because I think a lot of people shrink themselves to feel that sense of love and belonging from their partner, from their family, to get a sense of connection. They tone down themselves because they feel like they're too much. Have you ever said that? Oh, is this too much? Too much for who? Oh, I could tell you stories, but another day. So this is a real place where you can start to neglect yourself and kind of play it small in the hope of feeling safe and secure and get a sense of love and belonging. But is that authentic? If you're not truly being yourself, are you being loved and have that sense of belonging authentically? You often hear of people, when they truly are themselves, that they find their tribe. They get that sense of safety and security, love and belonging from their tribe. But if you're constantly playing it small, or, playing into some idea that somebody else has of you, that is not authentic. And it's really hard to keep up with that. And I want to get into this topic in another podcast because it really affects how people dress. People are so fearful of expressing themselves authentically for fear of rejection. That's for another day. We will get into that because it's such an important topic. But we can see here that on a very kind of, base layer of this hierarchy of needs, that style can start to be affected. Once our physiological needs are taken care of, we can start to think about our style and go, oh, that's too much for that person. I'm going to play it smaller. Moving up the pyramid, then we move to self-esteem. And this is where your confidence comes in, your sense of achievement, even respect for others. Also, the need to be a unique individual comes in here. And I feel like there's a big swing in this direction at the moment because we have seen, you don't have to look far if you go into any of the stores these days, that it's like this beige uniform and everybody's dressing the same. It's so uninspiring. It's a uniform of sorts, but not in the sense of, belonging to a workplace or a school or a team. It is not encouraging individuality. And I think people are yearning for that now. We need individuality. We need people's uniqueness to come out. And there's definitely a swing back towards that, thankfully. At the very top of the pyramid, you have self-actualization. And this is where you get to your creativity, your meaning and your potential and all this kind of stuff, the big picture stuff. But the other things are probably, needing to be taken care of first of all. These needs don't have to be ticked off as they are seen in the pyramid. You can work on them simultaneously, or you can kind of jump up and down. But really the physiological needs are something that do need to be taken care of. From there, you can kind of jump around. But you can see how confidence, individuality, a sense of identity, belonging, safety and security are all tied into what you choose to wear and how you choose to express yourself. So can we purely put style into the category of vanity? I don't believe so. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So do let me know in the comments whether you're leaning into, yes, style is vanity. I think fashion can be vanity. That's something very different. But style comes back to identity. And being who you are authentically is not vanity. Since we did a little bit of psychology there, why not? Let's dip into a little bit of history. How about that? History of clothing and style and fashion. This has long been documented. There's graves that are 30,000 plus years old that have been found with ivory beaded clothing to signify status. This goes back a long, long way. And in the Middle Ages, there was huge regulation around clothing because it was controlled to distinguish between classes. So, of course, the people in the higher classes set the tone, and it was very much, a status symbol to dress in a certain way. And then people of a lower class tried to emulate that. I mean, not much has changed there apart from the accessibility, I think. Is it right to separate people by class? No, absolutely not. We're not here to argue that. But just to note that fashion has been used as this communication tool for far longer than any of us have been around. And then in the late 16th century, it became a commercialized communication tool. People started to use fashion as more of a sense of self-expression rather than, being told or being dictated to about what we wear. Of course, as time went by, we had more choice, which was fantastic for expressing oneself, but it was also quite damaging, I think, particularly with the evolution of fast fashion, which I mentioned in a previous episode. People went from choosing things carefully so that they could express themselves authentically to buying everything and expressing everything when it was on trend. I think we've gone too far in that direction, absolutely. As I said in that last episode, we've gone too far in that direction and people have completely lost themselves. They don't know who they are, what they want, what they like because of it. There's just so much noise. So to wrap it up today, if you are the person who has been feeling guilty, and I do meet a lot of people who feel guilty about taking an interest in themselves, in taking care of themselves. Usually it's people with younger kids that they feel guilty for taking this interest in themselves. I hope this podcast has reminded you that this is not vanity. This is self-care. This is well-being. This is returning to yourself in the most authentic way. And that means being a great role model for people who are looking up to you. If you are that person who said, oh, style doesn't matter to me, I don't care about that stuff. Well, great, but you're still communicating something. Just be aware of that. So you are in control of what you communicate. You got to ask yourself, are you communicating what you want to communicate? We talked a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well, and how our style and identity fits into that, and that it is so important to our very survival and our being. And we touched on history as well, how not much has changed in as long back as we can trace. People have been using clothes as a way of communicating and even controlling. We've seen that, we don't have to look far, we see that around the world still to this day. So to sum it up, style, I hope you agree, it's not vanity, it's well-being, it's self-care. And I hope you can take the interest in it yourself, not feel guilty about that, because you will feel the benefits of when you do find your style, when you do settle into the person that you are or are becoming, that it can change things in all aspects of your life, relationships, work, lifestyle. It reaches so many things. I mean, we cannot think about style as something that exists on its own, separate to everything else. It is interlinked in absolutely everything. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got something out of that podcast. Be sure to review the podcast, leave a comment maybe, share it with somebody who you think might also enjoy it. And if you would like to get in touch with me and work with me, you can do so by booking a clarity call on my website, sarahRyanOfficial.com. If you want to sign up to my courses as well, they're all listed in my community. So if you go to the community, you'll find all my courses there as well. Okay, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.